welcome everybody. This is an event that we've done a couple of different times, a couple of different ways. Predominantly, we invite our partners, but we also invite people from our guest list of other events they've attended. And really, this is all Datto, this conversation. I'll certainly chime in now and again. And Des is the host and is going to run it all, and then turn it over to Jeff and let him talk for like 90 minutes and go from there. That was a joke, by the way. No, this is interactive, and Jeff would talk for 90 minutes if we asked him to, but he certainly does not plan on doing that. So Des, go right ahead.
So Desraie Thomas, I'm one of the channel development managers here at Datto, coming to you from good old Calgary, Alberta. So you can make fun of my accent at any point in time. I'm gonna just let the team is gonna introduce themselves. I'll let them each introduce themselves. Like I said previous, back and forth, as many questions as you guys want to throw at them. If you want to stump them, see if maybe they don't have an answer. We like throwing Jeff under the bus as much as possible. It's kind of an ongoing game. So if you guys want to be a part of that. And then with that, Jeff, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, also known as Stump the Chump. My name is Jeff. I work at Datto. I've been here about just over 3.5 years now, actually, in the role of a senior solutions engineer, specializing primarily in RMM. I've been working with RMM in this almost exact capacity since about 2006 for a multitude of different vendors. Spent some time at Rapid Fire Tools, IT Glue, Level Platforms, Autotask for about a month before we were merged into Datto. And yeah, here I am, happy to be a part of this. And I see a few familiar faces out there, actually, camera or not. And I will add that not only is Desraie Canadian, so is this entire Datto team that is on the phone. You're actually surrounded by Datto Canadians at the moment. So with that, I'll pass it over to Tulsie.
Thanks for that, Jeff. So hey, everybody, my name is Tulsie Narine, solution engineer as well with Datto. My core focus is in backup space. So everything BCDR, backing up your servers, your VMs, your desktop, laptops, all of that bit we'll talk about today. I'm a former sysadmin. I did sysadmin work for about 7 years. I worked for a startup here in Toronto. But I actually spent an entire decade at IBM focusing on complex infrastructure, cloud, take a lot of their stuff to go to market as we was actually shifting a lot of their legacy products and making that cloud ready. But yeah, interesting to actually be here today, talk to you guys as we are actually looking at how we are evolving this space as it relates to BCDR, and bring those questions as well. We want to try to address those for you as well. So with that said, I'll pass it over to Sarah.
Okay, hello everybody. So my name is Sarah. Hard to top these two, but I've been at Datto for about 1.5 years now. I started last January. Before that, I was in school, so I was finishing up. I've been primarily focused on the PSA, training on the PSA, doing anything pre-sale related on the PSA side. So I'll be showing you a couple cool things today, and then as you have any questions, shout them out. And I'm in Guelph, Ontario right now, so I don't know if any of you know where that is, but yeah, excited to be here today.
It's north. It's very north.
And I have to say, out of all of you guys, I think that my accent's the worst.
That's probably true, because you're like a middle Canadian. You're like in the middle there. So
Calgary doesn't really count. I'm not in a big city.
Yeah, I don't think mine's too bad. I don't usually get too many comments on it, but yeah.
Cool. Yeah, Tulsie taught me what hyperconvergence means. I appreciate that. When we first met, you told me about that, because that's more enterprise such. And obviously I've lived in SMB for my entire career pretty much. And then I learned from Sarah that you don't have to be that smart to do my job. Anybody out of school can do it. No, I'm just kidding. She's actually a super genius. She honestly kills it in the time that she's been here. It's amazing. She's already been sort of jettisoned into the top elite PSA gurus in the company. Actually, I see a hand. Is there a question?
Well, it's more of a comment, Jeff. You don't have to be that experienced. Might be a little kinder.
Oh yeah, that's way more what I meant, because I know she's way smarter than me, but I thought you needed this much experience to do this job. Well, actually, then in RMM, there's like a little show me how box that tells you where to click in the software. It's literally the robot that's replacing my job anyway. So, we'll see how that goes in the future. I don't know, anything else you wanted to throw in there, Des? Do you have any sort of setup stuff that you want to go into, or do you want me to kind of lay that out?
Gonna take right now, Jeff. I think that you can take it off from here.
Okay, cool, fair enough. So excellent. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate everybody's time here. And after looking at the list, as it turns out, that most of you, almost all of you, are existing Datto partners to some degree or another. You're either using some backup, maybe some SaaS protection, maybe a little RMM, PSA mixed in there, maybe some networking, maybe 1 out of 50 folks on the networking there. Actually got some cool new stuff coming out there. Maybe Tulsie might be touching on a little bit later. So since I feel like you guys are mostly partners, I mean, I don't really think it makes sense to talk about who Datto is, unless anybody here doesn't know Datto. No? Okay, cool. So Rob Ray has been doing his job then over the past few years for sure, drinking lots at the bar there. So what we've done here this time around is, and further to that, we're all solutions engineers. The folks here that have been brought to the call by Des, we are solutions engineers. We're not salespeople anymore, anyway. Tulsie and I haven't done that in years, and it's a way more exciting place to be. I also feel like that the things that we can talk about, the understanding, the depth that we need to have in our respective technologies, can be very valuable to the channel in all sorts of ways. Folks out there that are maybe using RMM and PSA, or maybe want some help with something that they need to fix or understand, or want to know how something works. On the BCDR side, those of you that don't use it, what's actually involved in restoring? What does that look like? Why is our technology different, especially this day and age, right? Like, I mean, the competition is pretty heavy, and in fact, if you expand that conversation across sort of our entire stack, and it's a lot. And by the way, I have no slides, so you're just going to listen to my talking head, by the way, until I go into the actual technology. But as I'm sure many of you know, the industry has been shooken up over the last couple of years. It's really been a lot of crazy consolidation, a lot of heavy mergers and acquisitions, unforeseen in some cases. There's a lot of vendors out there that now have a lot of overlapping technology. Right, they've got replicated duplicate departments and functionality that's overwriting itself, and it's created a lot of disparate options, but still, in my opinion, humbly, still get marketed in a misdirected, misguided way. And it's frustrating for me sometimes when I'm on the phone all day having conversations with folks of whom I'm introducing to Datto, and they have been perhaps using a competitive technology for some time, or better yet, are at the point where they're looking to do those comparisons and make an investment. And sometimes the things that I hear that are marketed to folks about other technologies out there really make me want to like rip my hair out, because it always comes down to the nitty gritty, right? It always comes down to what's really going on under the hood, what's really going on behind the curtain. And what are the conversations I need to have, obviously, of course, to win them towards Datto. But the only way I'm going to have those conversations is if I'm a true believer in that, right? I have to be interested, I have to be excited and a believer of the things that I put my name behind, or intend to support and talk about. And I feel this way, and I'm sure many of my SE colleagues feel the same way. We're all very, very passionate and feel very proud of the things that we do as a company. I like to point out, Datto, a big difference is that we're a true technology company, right? Again, when you look at the competitive landscape, you have all these companies that are working towards presenting themselves as this massive, perfect MSP platform. Nobody can do it. It just can't be done. The MSP market is just so unique in every situation. Although we can all label ourselves as MSPs, all of your businesses are completely different in every single way. There is no cookie cutter approach. Frankly, there's no such thing. So how on earth is a vendor supposed to come to you and say, look at this pane of glass? It's the only one you will need and ever need to support all your customers and all their needs. It's just frankly impossible. Cannot be done. And when you look into the landscape, the market, the vendors, the options, the choices, the things that are presented to you and forced into your head through social media and advertising, when you get into it, it's a lot less than what it should be, often than not, right? You have vendors that resell other technologies or rebrand them and relabel them and attach them to all their core offerings in an effort to raise that the ASP, the average sale per partner price point, which is something vendors look at very closely, right? What's the average revenue number that an MSP spends with a company on their first purchase? and how do we make that number bigger, right? That's kind of like the way most vendors think. I like to think of Datto as not only partner first, but a true technology company in the way that we only sell the stuff that we build, man. We either buy them out or we build it, right? I don't sell Sentinel AV or Bitdefender AV or WebRoot. I don't resell any sort of EDR solution or separate third-party coding tool. I don't know if many of you have heard, but we just recently released our own quoting tool called Datto Commerce, right? So that's the company looking at the business, looking at the market, looking at the holes in our platform and saying, where can we fill these gaps by thinking partner first instead of, you know, ASP first? How much money can I get out of that MSP on that first sale versus how can I position a platform, a technology stack that's actually designed to grow with them, but actually for real. You know, there was a time when you could only buy 5 PSA licenses minimum, right? Or 100 RMM agents. So where does that leave the startups, right? Where does that leave the spinoffs? Which, by the way, is still an impressively huge percentage of the MSP market. So that being said, what we've done over the last 3.5 years, frankly, since the Autotask merger, is we've built really cool things. We've built stuff that is available today that is functional across our very multifaceted product stack that actually unify and integrate in ways that nobody has replicated yet. Some of you may use it, some of you may use portions of it, some of you might not. But an example of that is, you know, having a RMM alert generate a PSA ticket, opening that PSA ticket, clicking take over device, remoting into that device with the RMM without having to, you know, re-sign into another platform, any of that, do some work with it, and then have those notes written to the ticket automatically for you, right? Little things like that. Or having BCDR appliance alert categories dedicated in the PSA. So when your appliance spins off a ticket because it has a problem, you get that in the PSA, and I can actually, in the same way, remote connect into that appliance just like I could a workstation or a server right from the PSA ticket. Little things like that. Or what about file protection and workplace being able to, that when you deploy agents, automatically creating service contracts in the PSA? Or being able to do things like disable physical ports on Datto switches right from an RMM, right? It's all those cool things that sets us apart. So we've had the chance to build these things, of which have only really recently kind of surfaced over the last like 6 months. I'm talking about that BCDR to RMM integration. I'm talking about the new topology mapping in RMM, the new ransomware detection that is native in an RMM agent. That's, you know, industry first. Super cool, super easy to run with. So I always find it important to kind of set the stage, set the flavor, in that, you know, the folks that are here on the phone from Datto, we're passionate. We love what we do. We're probably, in my opinion, the only department that completely loves their job day in and day out. And we really do. And from my perspective, I love being able to just swoop in, do the fun part of the sale, and then swoop away and let the sales guy do the hard work and chase the deal, right? I just get to come in and show off technology and click buttons, and I love it. And the other part of my job is to know technology. Right? What better job could you have when working for a vendor, other than Rob Ray and team? They just get to go out and drink and party all the time. Well, yeah, we only know that's definitely true. Anyway, all that being said, so I'll get off my soapbox for a little, because again, like Steve said, I could literally go on and on for 90 minutes straight. But what I'd like to do is get into the nitty gritty of the technology. And Tulsie, get ready. I'm going to throw it over to you in a second. So what I'm going to do is first, I'm going to open the floor and see, does anybody have any overall questions, comments, concerns, anything they'd like to indicate? Because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna toss it over to Tulsie. I'm gonna throw him under the bus a little bit, and I'm gonna get him to share with us some stuff that he has in mind that he feels is cool, from the BCDR core side of things, and perhaps some other things. Anybody got anything they want to input before we toss it over there? All right, Tom Holmand, I see has his hand up there. Does somebody need to unmute him or something? How's that work? Oh, you appear to be unmuted, but I can't hear you.
Ransomware.
Ah, there he is. Go ahead.
So we added that feature to our RMM. I've been a little hesitant to turn it on because I don't understand what it does, and I don't want that risk of having my servers access cut off for some unknown reason. Is there anything to be worried about there?
Two things. One, yes, always worry about something you haven't tried before, first of all. So yeah. Secondly, it's actually configurable on whether or not you want the ransomware detection to isolate the device. So you can disable the isolation of the device and just see that, it doesn't just kind of trigger that and take the device offline. It is primarily behavioral based. So pretty much it's going to see if a whole mass of files start to get like randomly encrypted really quickly, that's more or less the behavior it's going to detect to flag a service as malicious, and stop it and further isolate the device from the network. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, I just envisioned things like, a robocopy backup that's accessing a bunch of files at once would trigger something.
Yeah, or a PSX service running some scripts. Yep.
Yeah.
100%. But it's not really so much that as it's really the mass encryption behavioral that's likely to trigger that.
Okay.
And instructions to installing and deploying that, is there a knowledge base probably out there?
Yeah, if you just go into the help and punch in ransomware, all it is a monitor. You just go into a monitoring policy, select ransomware, turn it on. That's all there is to it. And there's a couple little parameters. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate your time so far. So with that, Tulsie, what do you got for us, my man?
Yeah. All right, team. So there's a couple things I want to talk to you about today. So the last time, if you were in a Datto presentation with me, actually it was the guy that showed up with a PowerPoint, and I'm going to change it up today. So there's a couple of things I want to talk to this group about. One is recovering with Datto in the cloud, show you what that experience looks like. But two is recovering using the on-premises appliance, recovering the system, and ultimately how to fail back. So I kind of got those couple of points from a survey that we did. So thanks to the group of members here who actually fill out that survey and actually give me at least a bit to focus on here. So let's get started. I mean, this is really for you guys that are technical, that are actually hands-on, working with Datto BCDR, or if you're considering Datto BCDR, I mean, this is going to give you a bit of a flavor. So I'll start with the Datto Cloud. The big value when we look at business continuity is the facility that Datto has built within a data center. And the whole goal around this facility is to try to solve for a few sort of use cases that you will typically run into. The first sort of one is, you're having that client come into you and said, hey, Mr. MSP or Mrs. MSP, I require a file from a few years ago. Can you help me recover that? And today that file might be sitting on a USB drive. It might be sitting on, archive storage. It might be sitting on direct storage. It might be sitting somewhere within that facility. And for you guys to actually react to that, it will take you some time to actually surface that request. With the Datto facility, we want to make that easy for you, and that's where file recovery comes into play in terms of finding, that single file, for example, that user might be looking for. Anytime you're storing data within our facility, it's always on a capacity tier. So what I mean by that is, we are not using archive storage. We're not putting your data on a tape, having that sit 10 years, whatever, 20 years, whatever retention policy you want to have in place. But the goal is, if you require something from 10 years ago, you'll immediately be able to actually access that file. You don't need to wait 24 hours for our system to rehydrate the data. It's not working like in the case of something like Glacier. Now, within the facility, you can simply come in here, let's say, for example, if some data on this Windows Server 2008 machine, we do give you a snapshot picker. I keep my environment very, very light, so I don't have much of a snapshot to pick from. But in the event that you want to actually find something from, June 2010, you will simply come in here, find a snapshot of interest, and then you can actually immediately mount that system within the cloud and have access to those files. Few clicks, get into the file that you want. From the tech standpoint, you guys are not burning through much time getting access to the file or folder of interest that user might be looking for. Mounting the data, it says took about 3 minutes. Early that actually took about 10 seconds for the system to actually get itself mounted. And you got a couple of ways to go about this. You can actually access the data right off the web browser. If you want to actually do something more in terms of like a bulk export, I suggest going through the secure FTP route, drop something like FileZilla on that machine, your machine or the end user machine, and they can pull directories and directories across across multiple volumes at that point back onto that system. Now, that's one sort of use case that we help you solve very easy. The second use case, it's really around virtualization. And this facility that we design is fair use. And what I mean by that is maybe you're going to be in a situation whereby the client might have to utilize this facility for a couple of weeks, maybe, in a couple of months. Maybe there is a much more of a major outage that's going to happen later on in the year, whereby they need to utilize this facility for a month and a half. The reason I say it's fair use, as much as we put in writing that clients are subject from an appliance standpoint for 30 days of virtualization per year, that is not something that is set in stone. If you have a client that required a compute of the Datto data center to run their environment for 2 months or something a little more greater, we're certainly going to work with you on that. That way you can have access to this full sort of compute environment to spin up those machines and continue accessing that workload. So spinning up systems, if you're not doing this today for your clients, I highly advise you to at least on a quarterly basis do DR tests through Datto or do DR tests on your own. But simply come in here, find those machines of interest and allocate, whatever compute resource makes sense. You'll notice by default, we allow you to pick 8 vCPUs and 16 gigs of RAM. Maybe you had a SQL machine here, and this was a big of a honker of a SQL machine, required 12 CPU cores and 64 gigs of memory. We will give you that resource. Reason this is advantageous for a lot of the MSPs that end up using this facility and utilize Datto is it's not a consumption model whereby we're gonna nickel and dime you for additional compute resource up here. You require the extra resource, let us know. We certainly want to make sure that it's going to be available for you. So imagine I did select all the resource I want. Go ahead and build your network or select one that you already have previously built. If you're going to be building your network, just keep in mind, these are all of these sort of process you want to document. So if you're going to be testing or doing DR tests, simply document this so you can actually save that network around for future use. But it's a good way for you to actually build that runbook, that red binder you can actually leave with your client. And this is part of the value add as an MSP you ultimately can deliver to your clients. I mean, everybody's going to be offering great backups out here. What's going to separate you from the next guy is the additional step that you're going to be taking to fully document this and prove that to the business owner that you're doing these due diligence to ensure in case something goes wrong, you have already put all the checks and balances in place and you already have the muscle memory to do this. That's obviously key, is going through this once, understand what is required. So in case of a serious disaster happens, you're not stumbling over any sort of blocks that you haven't prior encountered. So building a network is very simple. I mean, we ask for some basic information here, given an address space, a name, a subnet mask. You want to enable things like DHCP. Maybe you have some desktops up here. You want to auto-assign IPs. You want to create an IPsec tunnel. Again, very powerful. Maybe that client still have a secondary facility you want to bridge to. All of that can be taken care of up here. But once you actually establish a network, again, a few additional clicks, and then you can go ahead and online all of those systems. I'll tell you, with some of you have worked with things like AWS, Azure, insert your public cloud here. We have further abstract away our facility to be simpler. So as you're backing up your data, you're going to actually see those systems logically, simply pick those systems, assign a compute resource, and run them. The order of operations are like, basic high school math now. I'm going to be one to start things like my domain controller first, right? That's going to be something of interest I want to run. Once I have that online, there might be other systems I want to start. But again, I just want to demonstrate how simple this is. I already have the system mounted that took, 20, 30 seconds of my time to pick the resources. Once that is done, I can simply come in here, turn on the machines of interest that is critical to the business first, and then I can actually go through and turn on subsequent machines. By the way, if you don't want to do this, this is where our support team will come into play. Those guys are 24/7 and know this facility inside out. They can actually get this done for you. But I highly recommend at least you go through that process, get this done once, build that run book. That way you have that muscle memory of doing this, and build it as part of your documentation. So your L1 guys can actually get up here and get this done for you. You don't need somebody seriously trained, because again, if they can point and click, and move around in the facility. That's the level of skills you need here.
Remember talking to an MSP recently, he said he showed his 12-year-old how to do it, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, I know a lot of you guys wearing dual hats here. You know, your MSP, your sales, your tech, your everything. If I can teach the sales guys on my team to do this, anybody can do it. I'm not picking on anybody there, but so
there's a question, quick question that came in for you, Tulsie, actually,
sure.
here, if you don't mind. In building these recovery networks for BCDR, does the network remain or does it need to be recreated?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for the most part, the network will remain for 30 days. And the reason for that is Datto is constantly optimized in the back end. Your data might be sitting on node A today. In a month, it might be sitting on node Z. Because we are actually moving the data around, the network is actually logically linked to the nodes. So if we move that data around, that network will certainly not going to be within the scope of the data set. We want to blow that away. If you're going to be doing testing and you want to build that network advance of a week because you're going to be doing a DR test with that customer, you're going to be on site, you want to show them, look how cool this is. Certainly build a network in advance. It's going to be around for you. But just keep in mind, within about a month time frame, more than likely the network will become invalidated and we can ask you to recreate it. This is one of the things why I'm going to ask you to actually create a run book as part of, going through this DR test. That way, if you build it once, you know what that config looks like, document that. So it is a Flutter Fire, you have the binder with that information you can actually leverage.
Documented, you say? Yes. Perhaps with a PSA document manager feature? Quick little sneak segue soon, but coming. Yeah, carry on, my friend.
All right. So that's what all I want to actually talk about, Cloud. Last thing about this, though, is in the event you're in a serious DR, you're in a real situation, give us a call. I know you guys can do this. We give you the tools for you to do this. The reason we want you to give us a call is we need to back up this environment for you. If you're going to be changing data on those servers, we need to protect it. We need to work with you on a failback plan. How you want your data back? You want to download it from the portal? You want it on a USB drive? You still have an appliance locally? You want us to reverse send the data to? You want your data back on a new appliance? Whichever way you decide to go, it changes the flexibility you're going to have. If you still have an appliance on site, I'm able to snapshot those systems from the cloud and introduce them back locally. So the delta what change up here, let's call it, 100 megs of changes you made. That's all I'm firing back down to the local appliance for you to restore. So there is chains and parallels running, and we have the ability to keep those things in line with each other without causing any sort of corruption. So there's a lot of value there. Simply let us know. We're going to want to work with you on the best path to reduce sort of downtime. Now, jumping into the local appliance, there is one thing that was raised in the questionnaire that was actually filled out was the ability of, running something on Hyper-V locally or restore a system within ESX. And the method in terms of protecting those systems and minimize the return to operation window. So whenever you're utilizing our system, so let me jump into a local appliance here. And I'm going to spin up one of my local servers here. So here I'm on a local appliance. So let's imagine some sort of event happen, right? Maybe ransomware happened or a failed drive, or you deployed something from the latest patch Tuesday, and then begin removing some configurations, deleting your data. That stuff does happen, and we certainly had a few incidents last year. So in event that a situation like that arise, I want to actually say that happened to my file server here. I'm going to spin up the system locally on the appliance. I'll back up to 1 p.m. and I'm going to spin up this machine here. So one of the sort of feature that we give you here is this rescue agent. Keep that in place. And the idea of a rescue agent on our Datto appliance is ability for us to continue taking system state backup while you restore that system to the business. So again, maybe for this machine, I'm okay with 4 gigs of memory, 4 CPU cores. I'll pop this machine back on the network here. I'm going to ensure the rescue agent is applied, and I'm going to go ahead and actually fire up the system on the appliance. Now, your experience in running a system on the appliance, you saw I was running a system in the cloud. On the appliance is going to vary a little And the whole reason for that is it's going to come down to the level of compute resource and the type of appliances you have. That'll have a tremendous partnership with Intel. Intel, as it relates to their Optane technology, whether you're utilizing our flash-based product or the traditional spinning disk product in the professional or enterprise line, we always will actually leverage the Optane drives to actually accelerate virtualization. So as close as intelligent tiering as it gets, we're going to be using that for optimization of spinning up any sort of system. When you do return a system back to that client on your network, again, the way I like to look at this is quick as a coffee break. Tell them, you know what, from the time they submit that ticket, you guys actually action it. You come in here. In this case, my system is extremely optimized. It's very fast here. But I have a machine online, but in most reality, the sort of situation you might be in, it might take you a couple minutes, within about 5 minutes or so forth, you will be able to actually have a system online and get that client working again, get those employees in here accessing the system. So here is my system I was backing up, it got compromised, got hit by ransomware. I back up to the previous snapshot and I'm running it right off the appliance. Users continue access to the system and making change. And a big thing, the sort of experience we want to deliver on these local appliances, you'll notice the system is not slow. It's not slow as molasses. I mean, that's not the experience you want to be offering as an MSP. You want to be able to deliver a premium experience. So we are able to actually get in the system, run any sort of application, and it's really quick. It's very responsive. So taking this a little further, imagine we were making changes up here, right? I'm creating content. I might update my database, might be doing Windows updates, whatever the case, while the system is running locally on the appliance. We need to get the system back into the production environment, and there's a few ways for us to do this for you. Anytime you actually spin up a system and create a rescue agent, you'll notice there is a secondary layer within the restore view called rescue. This is going to be a reflection of any sort of systems I have spun up. I can, do individual file restores from that rescue agent. I can do image export. I can export the data as a Gen 1 or Gen 2 VHD file and then copy that into my data store. I can do like VMDK export, again, move that into my ESX data store. I can do bare metal restore as well. And this thing on bare metal restore, I know the name might be tripping us up a little because typically when you hear bare metal, you're thinking about going back to a physical host. The bare metal technology that Datto has written will work both for physical and virtual systems. And we have written a block-based copy product that will dynamically copy data from this rescue agent as the system continues to change on the appliance and fetch that into the production host. So let me translate that to value for the group here. Your typical, failback operation might involve, tech spending 5 hours or 10 hours to actually copy data from the appliance back into the production system. That's money wasted. If I'm going to be, spending allocating time from one of my guys to actually do a copy job like that. Great, if the client is paying, they have a big wallet, that's fine. But in the sort of day and age that we are in, everybody is strapped for cash. So I want to try to optimize failback as quick as possible. The BMR technology that we written, as I mentioned, it's able to actually sync itself with this rescue agent and copy the data back into the production system. Typically, if you're coming from a large vCenter environment, you have access to storage, vMotion, and so forth. Those things will add to the layer of Datto and actually smoothen that failback process. Well, most of your customers will not be able to afford vMotion license. I mean, unless again, they have a very big wallet. So let me show you how this works. For us to actually fail the system back, again, it's continue running. We imagine folks are making changes. I don't have Hyper-V right now. I know this question was asked about for Hyper-V, but I'm going to show you how I will achieve this within ESX because that's what I have. Didn't went back in the office in over a year and my Hyper-V system has fell over on the side. But within here, all I need to do is to create a template within the hypervisor or the physical machine, whatever the case might be. I just need to actually prep that machine so I can boot it with our recovery tool. Our recovery tool set is simply an ISO utility you download from our website, download@datto.com, inject it into the VM and run it. Once you actually run the system, the experience to actually restore this machine is all web-based. The system will broadcast an IP address. You simply head there with your browser, and now you're going to have a few options. What I'm really interested in doing is what we call a bare metal restore. Again, bare metal restore will work both for physical and virtual system. If case I was restoring to physical hardware, we will inject necessary drivers. But in case since this is a VM template, we will actually forego a step in doing that. Find the appliance in your network. I have a lot of appliances sitting on my system. I just need to find the one I just did a virtualization on. So I'm just going to log in here. And once I do log in, what I'm really after is that rescue agent that I spun up. So this is a temporary machine I have running up here. Again, I have the customer, have their employees continue working away on that system. As part of that, whenever I select the latest snapshot, I'm presented with this option of continuous mirroring. What this allows me to do as users are making changes to that system and as the backup policy continue to execute as part of the rescue agent, I'm able to intelligently grab data. So let me show you what I mean. If I actually come back out here and find a system, I'll find a rescue agent. And if I was to take a snapshot of it, there, I got my snapshot taken. I'm just going to back up here for a second, and I'm going to go back into the system. I now have a new snapshot taken of that machine. I can restore from the current state of the snapshot, or I can check that box to continue replicating the data as it coming out of that system running on the appliance. So where are you going to be saving that time I mentioned about? You're going to be saving time from the standpoint you're starting to restore during the business hour. You're not allocating somebody to actually babysit this and watch it. You simply online the system on the local appliance, have the customer continue working, and at the same time you're starting to restore once you got the hardware replaced or you got a VM template built within the hypervisor, you begin to restore at that point. Once we actually go through, set up my partitions and so forth, how I like the disk to be laid out properly, I will start the restore process. And again, the two systems going to be talking to each other, keeping the both of them in line. As data getting changed on a system in the appliance, we're going to capture it. We're going to move it back into production. Let's say, for example, it's 6 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, whatever not you want to ready to do the cutover. You simply shut the VM off in the Datto appliance, finish the last replication copy of the data. Usually that's going to take you a couple minutes, and simply power on that system. Well, what this ensure you did not set aside somebody's evening to get this done. You did not set aside somebody's weekend to get this done. You did this entire copy process of the data while that client was working away on the system. So those are the couple items I want to share. If there is questions, please go ahead, unmute yourself. I'll love to take those up. But generally, that's the Datto Cloud, the power in terms of virtualizing those systems, doing your DR test, building the runbook, doing that within a couple clicks. On a local appliance, again, the ability to actually spin up systems and reducing that failback window and doing that down to a short few minutes of failing back. There's some preparation work that needs to be done in advance, but at least you're not wasting a lot of time. You certainly can take that time and focus on other valuable billable work perhaps you have.
Can I ask a
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ryan Martin. Hi, I had a possible question for a use case on that. So let's say I'm taking on a client that only has a physical server, and I'm trying to transition them to a virtualized environment. Could I theoretically use this stuff to kind of back up their server, keep their all while working, and then transition them live into a virtualized environment by doing a bare metal restore and then creating a VM from this all while live, instead of doing a P2V conversion, which is all manual, and they have to not be working in their system during that time? It sounds like I could just back it up and create it virtually on their live in their environment.
Absolutely, Ryan. So yeah, I mean, we like not to position ourselves as a migration tool.
Sure.
but the use case that you just described there absolutely can be done.
Okay, because that could potentially save days worth of time.
Right. Yeah,
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
absolutely.
Any other questions for Tulsie on what was covered there? No. Awesome. Tulsie, do you have anything else you want to share?
No, that's it, team. Thank you for your attention. So I'm going to pass it, back to you, Jeff. I take it, we're going to get Sarah up next to talk a bit about PSA.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun idea.
Yay, business management time.
Yay, business management. So I don't know what you got planned, but I suggested to Sarah, bring some of the things that are fun and cool from your job, and let's share some stuff that we've got with this group. So yeah, I don't know, what do you got planned? I'm excited to see.
Okay, cool. So let me share. Let me go ahead and share my screen to start. Perfect. So can everybody see that? Okay, 2 thumbs up. All good. Okay, perfect. So what I have planned today, I was going to go through a little bit of some of my tips and tricks around the dashboard, the widgets, because I find like this can easily get kind of cluttered, especially when you're in the PSA, right? So maybe some tips on sort of tidying it up, making the view a little bit more tailored, a little bit more relevant to what you actually need to see. From there, I'm going to dive into the documentation manager. I'm not sure if all of you are utilizing that feature within Autotask today, but I'll go through sort of some tips and tricks on documentation manager, how it can be utilized, and maybe even a use case, right? That'll tie in nicely with maybe Tulsie's example as well. And then from there, I was thinking of maybe going into a little bit of like the sales side, going into an opportunity, could lead me into Datto Commerce, showing a little bit of that side as well. We could sort of run with it, see if any questions come up and just sort of go from there, if that sounds good.
Sounds very good.
Awesome. Okay, so looking at the dashboard, the first thing that I recommend that you do when you come into the PSA, like I did when I started a little over a year ago, is to delete the tabs that you don't need, right? So usually a lot of them are sort of cluttered across the top, especially when you first get into the tool. So my suggestion is to go in and start closing the tabs that you don't need. When you close out a tab, it's not going to be deleted forever, right? It's always going to be readily available where you can go into that default tab setting, for example, and you can always pull one of those pre-made tabs that we provide you with, right? So that's sort of my first tip. Get rid of the stuff that you don't need. If I'm not really working on projects or, I'm not maybe really in charge of those Datto devices, I'm just going to close out those tabs, right? The less clutter, the better. In terms of the view that I am focusing on, right, I've created my own. It's called a workspace, my work, right? I just named it that. Super creative name, but again, you could change that as well. The view itself is a lot more tailored around me and the service desk side, right? So what tickets am I responsible for? What projects am I working on? What are my aging tickets, right? What are things that are getting older by the minute that I keep ignoring? Maybe some tickets with no activity yet. Or again, I tend to do this as well, but I forgot to enter my time. So I can click into that and I can go ahead and enter that time there. Same thing with keeping track of hours, right? Again, focused on myself. How many hours am I tracking for the week? How much of that time is billable versus non-billable time as well? In my case, I don't know how a majority of you guys do it, but for my technicians, right, I don't have a dispatcher or anything like that. Again, you could always use the dispatch calendar, which is a feature. But in my case, something nice is, just creating a widget called Ready to be Picked. This is showing me all open and unassigned tickets. I can sort by any of these sort of columns across the top, right? And again, I can add additional columns if I need to. And from here, as a tech, I can go in, I can accept that ticket, make it my own, right? Or I could forward that ticket and assign it to somebody else, right? Another thing here is obviously the widget library, right? So again, my view is a little cluttered, but you can always create your own widgets from scratch. The one thing that I recommend starting with is a reference point, right? Just going through that reference of the widget library. It's all sorted by entities, right? An entity is essentially an item that you wish to report on. So whether that's tickets or surveys or billing items, I can change that. All of these widgets are pre-made. And with every release, we are adding new widgets to the library as well, right? And in the knowledge base, you can keep track. You can see all the available widgets in there as well. So if I maybe want to see, how many tickets each of my resources are completing, I can change how I want to view it. I can also go ahead and I can add any additional filters if I need to, right? If I need to narrow it down, if I need to change that date range, right? I could go ahead and get granular with that as well. But that's it, right? I can go ahead and hit finish, maybe see how it looks on my dashboard. If I need to tweak it further, right? I can just go ahead and keep editing it. Another thing here that I recommend is using what we call these tab groups, right? So instead of having a bunch of tabs across the top, what you can do is you can go ahead and you can go into the tab settings and you can put it in a different tab group, right, to separate it. So whether there's certain things that I'm looking on the sales side, again, if you wear multiple hats, sales, service, projects, maybe RMM related, right, that's a nice way to also sort out your tabs, just keep yourself more organized, right? The other tab here that I want to point out, and this one doesn't get enough love, right? It's the customer success dashboard. Again, this is a pre-made tab that you can go in and grab. The really nice thing about this tab is that it uses what we call this tab level filter, right? So if I go back into the tab settings, and you can do this with any of your dashboards, but you'll notice that I can go ahead and I can set a tab level filter, right? In my case, I'm filtering it by account. I can change that as well if I need to. You do need to set a default value, right? So a default account that'll show up there. You can limit the selection, right? All of that. I just, gave myself everything. But from here, based on, just just changing this, for example, if I were to put maybe Able Manufacturing in there, when I hit enter, right, those widgets will change to reflect everything for that specific customer, right? So it'll break it down by tickets, hours that we're working. Something else that's really nice is those SLA metrics, right? For QBR or just for reporting purposes, I can keep track of those as well, just down here. Right. So that's the dashboard, right? Just some sort of quick tips, tricks, make it a little easier to see, a little bit more organized. From there, I do want to dive into the documentation manager. Again, this is still fairly new, so there is still maybe some people who haven't maybe ventured into the doc manager area. I can get there a multitude of ways, right? I can go into an actual account and get into documentation manager, which is how I usually do it, to be honest. I could also just go in here at the home, right, and go into documentation manager that way. So Autotask has contained a knowledge base feature for a long time, right? And it's always sort of been geared around ticket support. This newer doc manager feature is conversely built around an account or a company. In fact, each document is always linked to a customer or to your internal account. So it just provides a place to store useful customer documentation, right, including rich text articles, diagrams, hyperlinks, right, if I need to add any images. So as Tulsie mentioned, right, the red binder, instead of having the red binder, it could be a red binder in the PSA, essentially in the doc manager. On the left-hand side, right, and again, I have targeted this one for Able Manufacturing HQ, which is my fictional active customer there. On the left-hand side, I can see all of their assets, right? So if I need to maybe pull up all 4 servers, I can have access to those. And again, with any columns across the top, the column choosers are nice, right? So if there's anything else that you maybe want to add, have visibility into, right, you could push those across there as well. Down here, I have my specific documents, right? So these are, again, tied to that specific account. So whether it's specific onboarding procedures, run books, or whatever it may be, right? In my case, I have an onboarding procedure and a naming convention. When you create a new document, one thing here is that I can choose to publish this to my customer if I'd like to, right? Or I could keep it internal. Another thing that I suggest that you leverage is the document category, right? Once again, just to keep it organized. Is it a run book? Is it a quick tip, right? Is it part of an operational procedure, right? Just to sort of segment those documents that way as well. This could be a reference link. If you already have documents built out, if you live by your Google Docs or your SharePoint, you could always throw in that link in there and still have access to that link right directly from your documentation, Or I can go ahead and I can start building in internal content, right? So again, if I need to copy and paste something in there, add a hyperlink, add images, add a table, right? That can all be done within here. Another thing that is handy is the tags, right? Which I'll show you sort of from a ticket, but the tags could help guide you through that document, right? So as issues come up based on the tags, I could go ahead and maybe, you know, have these documents suggested, have easy access to them. Again, I have a checklist. If there's certain steps that I want to build out, I can always leverage the checklist within the document. And then I have my related items, right? So for example, if I were creating, I don't know, disaster recovery, data backup, new user setup, you know, maybe it applies to a few accounts, maybe it's not just the one. I can relate different accounts to that, right? So the document now falls in line with multiple accounts. Or, you know, maybe it's a document that relates to a certain asset category, right? So, you know, maybe this one is for SSL certificates, right? Or for servers. I can tie it to that asset category. Now, right, I have easy access wherever I need it. So that's sort of the document there. Again, I can get there from the account. The other way that's sort of nice and, you know, in a use case scenario is obviously going to be from a ticket, right? So if I pull up creating a ticket from scratch here, for example, the way that I like to create tickets is I love to leverage this ticket category, right? If you haven't played with the ticket categories, I suggest you do so because it just makes life a lot easier. Right, so if I go with sort of like the ransomware scenario, I can select that ticket category and it will just bring up relevant information, right? So based on that category, it can essentially template the ticket. So I can hide certain fields, I can add fields, it can pre-fill a ton of fields, and I can also make certain fields mandatory, right? So if there is critical information that we should be capturing based on that issue, right, that's where the ticket category can sort of help guide that. Right, making sure that we're not missing anything or, you know, forgetting to capture that information. The last step here would be to tie in who's the customer. So I'll put Goldman, Wise, and Weinberger there. You'll notice that the category has also placed some nice tags. It's brought in a checklist. I'll go ahead and save that ticket. Right, everything was pre-filled in with the category, even the description. Right, so all I had to put in was the account, and I could just go ahead and save that ticket. Now you'll notice that based on the tags that were pre-filled, the system can help me find a solution, right? This is where the documentation can come in handy, or the knowledge base articles, right? Or both. Based on the tags that I have, the system can let me know, right? Each of these 3 articles have one matching tag, so they might be pretty useful. The first one, if I were to open up this one, right? Ransomware, this is not a drill. This one's a KB article, right? So I have some content in here. And again, with the checklist, I have the option of bringing it over directly onto the ticket, right? The last step here actually that I did forget to do was I wanted to tie an asset, right? So obviously if ransomware did happen, I would have to tie maybe the server that was infected. So I'll come in here and maybe I'll just go ahead and put in that jump server, right? And I'll just resave this. So once I tie the asset or the configuration item to the ticket, what's nice is that on the right-hand side here, I right away will get that Datto RMM device insight, right? So if the server does have an RMM agent on it, I'll have the ability to obviously remote in, see some device information. And not only that, but because that server is being backed up by a Datto BCDR device, I'll also have some Datto continuity information that's present on my ticket. Right, whether there was open alerts that I need to look at, when was the last local backup, the last offsite sync, right, and even that last screenshot verification, which is a good indicator of, you know, when was my last bootable backup. From here, I can dive directly into the RMM, right? So if I hit that device button, it's going to take me over into the RMM UI. Give it a sec here. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Sometimes, as I said, my Wi-Fi, not my friend.
You're good.
But awesome. But over here, right, so now I'm just looking at that jump server, but on the RMM side. The beautiful thing that down here, you'll see, oh, where did it there's my Datto continuity. Let's try it again. Maybe the server went offline, but on the Datto continuity side, right, I will have that screenshot verification that will be present there. There it is, right? So that screenshot that was taken 18 hours ago. I'll also have insights into the last 10 days of backups that took place, right? As you briefly saw, I think it's my connection, but at least you guys got a brief glimpse, right? The last 10 days of backups, as well as the Cirrus device that is backing up that server, right? So from here, I can go ahead and dive into that recovery that Tulsie showed me, right? So ticket in the PSA takes me directly over into the RMM. I have my insights, and I can launch into the BCDR recovery directly from here as well, right?
Sorry, you actually have a few questions on the documentation.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't looking at the chat, but sure. Do you want to read them out to me?
Yeah. First one here is, can you search the documentation like you can the knowledge base?
Not exactly. So on the knowledge base side, I can search like here. On the documents, I won't have that exact feature, right? The way that I can do it is it's basically going to always be tied to the account insights, which for some reason is way at the bottom on this category, right? But I can access them directly from here, right? So it's more so based on like the keywords, the content, right? But I won't be able to search it like I do with the knowledge base article. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I like this question, and I'm going to quote it word for word. Will Documentation Manager keep evolving to a point where it will be able to replace IT Glue? Any timelines? If yes, I hate Kaseya.
That is a really, really good question. So to be fair, the Documentation Manager is still in the pretty early stages of its functionality, right? We do want to expand on it. Right now, this will not necessarily display something like an IT Glue or Passportal, right, or tool similar to that. One of the main pieces to some of those documentation platforms, like IT Glue, for example, is the ability to store passwords, right? Today, this is not part of the documentation feature. However, if you find yourself leveraging IT Glue very little, or if you don't really have a tool, right, it's sort of, you're all over the place with that, it allows you to leverage the documentation right inside of the PSA. On the next release.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say in the next release, which is coming out, I wrote this down, May 26th for America East, June 2nd for America West. But you will have the ability to do article versions, rollbacks, and approvals, right? So that's sort of the next step. And then who knows, we're definitely expanding the feature. I would hope that one day, it'll be just as good as an IT Glue, but as I said, still early stages, still lots of exciting things to come.
Yeah, so that sounds like an IT Glue, what they call document revisioning, I think, if I remember correctly in my day there. But yes, the goal is to replace the need for our partners to go elsewhere for documentation and password platforms. That absolutely is the goal. And we're going to build our own or buy them out, frankly. There's more. What's the best way to export the documentation when needed?
That is a good question. So right now, there is no way to import documents in, and there's no way to really export them out, to be honest, right? So when I go into a document, you'll notice, I'll show you sort of the final thing here. With the tools, I can make a copy, I'll see the history of it, but there's no way to really export it out.
I guess I could print it and then run it through OCR and convert it back to Word. No, I'm kidding. Cool. There's more.
And the other thing here, you can also share this out with customers. As I said, right, the way that you would share it with them would be through the portal, right? So you can give them access to search their own documentation. Again, if there's certain runbook procedures that should be shared with them, right, they should have access to, you can make that available via the client portal.
Very cool. Can the documentation window be bigger? Typically, we need a larger window for entering content.
Oh, do you mean when I create like a new one here? That's a good question. Let's see if this will do it. This is as big as it'll go. So it could take up your full screen. Oh, you mean this one?
Yeah, I think he means the content section.
Yeah, you can expand it this way.
Oh.
Let's see if it'll, I think this is my max. Yeah, that's the max.
Cool. I answered this because I thought I knew the answer. Is there in the application, can you change the view so the background is a lighter color? So I just,
yes, I get that all the time.
Yeah.
I was debating whether I should go dark mode or light mode because I do get that all the time. So in the PSA, if you go to like your little person icon there, you could go to display preferences. And there's like, I don't even know how many this is, 7 or 8 different options. They're kind of fancy, right? Midnight mode, blackout mode. But I could definitely make it lighter, right? I always say like in the morning, I'll start with light mode. By lunch, I'm on my dark mode because my eyes start to hurt.
Those of you that might use RMM and PSA, the next PSA release in June actually has a skin that makes it look just like Datto RMM, which is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
You saw that, right?
Yeah, it'll match it. Yeah. Yeah. So if you like the
Okay.
RMM dark mode more than the PSA dark mode, we'll have that one soon too.
So this gentleman's talking about he doesn't necessarily want passwords. He wants data collected from line guard and the likes and RMM. So like auto documenting from other sources, I guess. That would be the ticket.
Ticket integration. I mean, with LineGuard, if you are using LineGuard, there is an integration. If I could spell, it was in here. Or is it GAR?
Take out the
No,
U. Yeah.
Oh, I know.
well,
Yeah, I was going to say it's GA. Yeah. So there is an integration. I mean, even with IT Glue, right? Typically, they'll do two-way syncs of whatever it is in there, right? Looks like quickly
Very
import,
cool.
relate auto task counts with ROAR, generate auto task tickets automatically, gain instant insight, track domains, and SSL certs on imported accounts. Yeah, so that could be pretty useful. Again, I could put this in the chat as well so that if anyone wants to take a look at it.
Is there a way to add more than one DRMM device to be attached to a ticket?
Yes. So when you go into a ticket, if I edit this, for example, over here, I can add additional assets. On this category, I guess I limited it, but if I show you just from scratch here, down here, I can have additional assets, right? Once I choose the account. I'll just put in my guys at Able, right? So down here, I could have as many assets as I need to tie to the ticket.
So multiple configuration items?
Correct,
To a ticket.
yeah.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah,
All
it doesn't
right,
have to be RMM devices, any sort of configuration items that you have. Yeah.
Cool. You got more? You got more for us?
No, and I know there's only about 25 minutes, so I do want to give Jeff you some time as well.
Feels like our joint demos.
I know.
Feels like
it's
when we
fun.
do a joint demo. Always we have an hour-long joint demo we'll do for a customer, and Sarah always leaves me 7 minutes at the end for RMM, but that's okay because I don't know, her stuff's interesting to most people. Awesome. Great job,
That's
Sarah.
funny because I always
Super
feel the opposite.
appreciate
I
it.
always feel like everyone can't wait for the RMM.
Yes, I figured. Very cool. No, appreciate that. Great job.
Thank you.
So hopefully that was useful to everybody. I do have a few minutes left. I got some stuff that I can cover on RMM. That's a little bit more tips and tricks kind of lined up, and then I've actually got some brand new experimental content. I think I'm going to share with you guys as well that might be interesting. So before I roll into the RMM, does anybody have any general questions, comments, complaints, concerns, anything to touch on before the next phase here?
A general question.
Yes.
So in light of news like kind of what broke yesterday, late in the day, SentinelOne released, hey, here Dell, all Dell workstations and laptops are potentially has a vulnerability.
And I saw that.
So I mean, what's our steps? I mean, obviously we have a SOC that helps us. We have SentinelOne. We have, but the RMM's got to be our tool, right? That's where we got to go to kind of dig and see what systems we have, which firmware we have, which drivers, BIOS we have. Just generally want to open that question up and see what's like a good plan of action. I don't know if anyone else also has some input on that specific or general speaking.
I think it'd be great if Datto RMM just built a monitor for us that alerted us.
Alerted you of the Dell driver exploit?
No, of which systems we need to address.
Okay. Well, we did do that with the Exchange vulnerability that happened a little while back. And we did it with what was the other one? There was a printer one, I think we released a patch for or fix for, I forget. But that's funny that you said exactly that, because that's actually right around the content that I want to share with you. So it's funny, I didn't even pay you for that perfect segue. Cool. Anything else anybody wants to throw out there? Don't be shy. Okay. All right. So I'm going to try to, and some of the stuff here that I've covered, or that I'm going to cover, and some of the stuff that Sarah covered, and some of the stuff that Tulsie covered, is frankly as a direct result of the survey that you guys filled out, right? So some of you gave us some feedback on what you would like to see from us, and that's where this was born, right? So if you find this useful or not, we always love the feedback, positive or negative, either way. But also giving us direction on the stuff that you would like to perhaps cover in the future is super helpful. So that is why the content is what it is now, is because we had like 10 or 15 people give us some feedback, some specific things they wanted to see, and we're trying to sort of cover as much as that as possible. So again, this time, even though Steve said this is for Datto, it's actually for you guys, right? This is fun for us to share with you, and we always want to make sure it's as pertinent to as many people as possible. But it's tough, right, when you got a mixed audience with mixed products, mixed customers, mixed non-customers, etc. So it's tough for us to hit the target across the board. So always feedback is important, before and after. All right. Now, let's get into some more tech. And I hope you all appreciate the no slides policy so far. I certainly am, because I am so tired of PowerPoint. I don't think that's just me, though. And okay, so on my screen, assuming you can see it, it's nice and complicated, and there's too many colors and numbers and shapes and stuff. It just melts my brain having to try to stare at something like this. But in sort of the idea of what we call One Datto, which is our approach to the market for a unified experience across a very multifaceted product stack. So it has a lot to do with and I started at the beginning of this conversation. A lot of vendors out there fake it, right? Basically, at the end of the day, when you go looking into the specifics on all the tools that my comparative vendors have, they have a lot of great stuff. There's a lot of great killer technology out there. Some stuff that's actually even better than ours, dare I say it, only because maybe we don't do it yet. But there's a lot of disparity, right? So the One Datto is our premise, our sort of mantra, if you will, our philosophy of getting as close to that single pane of glass as possible, while still knowing it's basically impossible. Okay. Anyway, let me pull up the RMM here. Okay, and we'll make that a little bigger. Oh man, this machine's running slow. Okay. All right, so new dashboard. And for the PSA users out there, I don't know if you caught that, but I did mention in the next PSA release, super excited, there's a skin and it's going to look like Datto RMM. So they're actually both going to look like very similar tools, which I can't wait. Or maybe it'll just confuse me infuriatingly. So last time I did this, there was some interest in my dashboard here from an RMM perspective. This is my what I've now deemed the primary global mega super dashboard. It is absolutely by design meant to give you a whole lot of information that may or may not be useful to you. But point being is it's a lot. And this is based on my entire customer base, right? So I've got 50 or 10 or 200 customers out there. This has given me insight on everything that they've got. And one of the things that I built that people just unexpectedly really love is the way that I've illustrated Windows 10 versioning in this dashboard. You can do this per customer, per site, whatever you want to do that. And basically all this is leveraging a script that's built into Datto RMM. So you know what, actually maybe I'll walk you through this quickly, but I want to save time for my experimental content. Okay, so we'll go into automation. There's a really great script in here that just identifies the build and writes it to a custom field for you. Windows build identification tool. So you just run this guy. You can run this once a day, once a week, whatever you want. And all it's going to do is identify the build and write it to a custom field on the device, right? So if I grab a device, grab my laptop, for instance, here, you'll see that the build is indeed conveniently written to this UDF right here. And I labeled it as such. So I can see it's Windows build 2004. So instead of having to deal with versions, I want to know builds, right? Because that's what everybody kind of understands off the top of their head. So then once I've identified that data here in the RMM, what I can do is I can spin up a filter. And this filter is going to be, it's going to, represent, Windows 10 1909 builds, for example. And we'll do this globally, and we'll say, okay, so we're going to base that on the UDF that we created beforehand, Windows build, and we're going to say if it, contains the numbers 1909, then we're going to save that. Pardon me 1 second. My crazy cat yelling at the door there. Okay. So now I've got a filter here. I've already got the filter, so I'm not gonna build another one. That's just going to pull for me all the 1909s that are written to that. So I run that script as a job once a day, once a week. I create the filter. Whoops, why can't I pull the previous filter? The new UI here. There we go. So there's my filter from before. So when I click that, that's just quite simply going to populate with all the devices simply based on that criteria that I created, right? So there's my custom device filter identifying Windows 10 1909 builds out of a field that's being written by a script that's run regularly on the devices, okay? Now, further to that, in the dashboard, I have what's called a device filter widget, which is this guy right here, device filter. And now all I need to do with that guy down here, where did it hide it? There it is. Now all I have to do is change the settings for this filter widget. And I'm just going to tell it to use the filter of the 1909 that I selected. And I'm going to say if there's ever more than one, that I want it to actually turn red. Right? So I just save that. And then once I've saved it, I can name the actual widget here differently from the filter name. Right? So I just have it sort of laid out a little bit cleaner there. And then ongoingly, I will continually get to see essentially my Windows 10 versioning across my estate. Now, if I want to do something about it, I can do that too. I can go ahead and I can select, for example, all these 1809s, all 27 of them. And of course, that's going to quickly highlight them for me or select them for me. So now I'm going to select them all. And Datto RMM ships with a couple wonderful scripts. Actually, many were added today, as a matter of fact. But there's one in here that essentially does like a Windows 10 upgrade in one script. So this is hard-coded to let me pick from the latest 2 versions. So I can grab, 20H2. And the real ticket here is skipping that out-of-box experience, right? Disable user override checks and run it. And now, obviously, because of the nature of Windows 10, there's no way in heck that this is going to work on all of them. It never does. But the good news is that we can throw it at the wall, see which ones stick, and then focus our time and energy and effort on the ones that need our attention as we kind of burn through them. So that's my little tip and trick on having nice ongoing updated insight on Windows 10 versioning, which again, I always hear is a big pain point for many MSPs. And then dealing with it there. And there is, of course, also the Windows update policy that you can use to somewhat automate the blocking of feature updates from getting installed unexpectedly. And then leveraging the selecting the different branch and disabling things like quick startup and enabling things like peer sharing, which is super useful. So hopefully that makes sense there. Now, if there's any questions on that, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, I'm going to jump into my experimental
Hey, Jeff, before you jump on, Brian actually asked a great question in the chat. And it's regarding best practice dashboard for configuration for roles of employees. I mean, I know you spent some time building out this dashboard, but very similarly to like the PSA, where you might have dashboard based on certain roles. Does that exist here within the RMM?
Kind of. I mean, what I can do is I can have dashboards. First of all, no, there is no best practice around building them out. There just isn't. I just, I get paid to sit here and build dashboards, so I'm going to do that, right? So I have some fun with it. In the real world, in your guys' real world, there is the ability to share dashboards amongst the different security levels in the system. So if you have like a lightweight technician or a technician that's only allowed to see certain data within certain dashboards, then you can assign that dashboard to him and give them access to that. That's about the extent of it. But they would still pretty much be able to do whatever they want with their own dashboard. So it's not like they can't change it anyway. But if that user only has access to certain, perhaps device groups or site groups, then I'm sure the content would be restricted to what he has access to and what's going to show on the board.
Second to that question was, again, another interesting thought. Is it possible to have the widget disappear in case there is no value associated with it, rather than it taking up real estate on the dashboard? It just poof, disappears, only shows up if there is actual value associated with it.
You know what? I'm going to have to label that as a feature request, and a really good one, actually. I don't have that ability now, but I would like that if I saw widgets appear because there's data that wasn't there before. That would be super cool.
If you do get that done, you owe Brian a case of 24.
Cool.
Yeah, I really like Carrie's suggestion too. The ability to export dashboard configs in a community and share them out. That would be really cool, actually.
Oh, like we do with the comms. Yeah, we do that with components. Cool. Yeah, I hope they continue to build on this, because this, is super fun for me. I'd also like to be able to add way more widgets. I'm only allowed to add, I think it's, however many are here. What is there? Like 20 or 25. It's like a limit. But you can at least have as many dashboards as you want. I did see a development environment that had dashboards based on role, actually, which I thought was laid out pretty cool. Yeah, 20 I think is the max, because it did let me bring in the one when I demoed that there. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about this because this was actually brought up right when I got started here. I've actually been having some success talking about cybersecurity. Shocking, right? Who would have thought? It's all the rage. It's all the things that people like to talk about today. In fact, in a lot of cases, you're getting your customers are coming to you going, hey, cybersecurity is important now. What do I need to do, right? And from what I'm finding, especially on sort of the smaller MSP shops or maybe the newer MSP shops, is that like cybersecurity is almost arbitrary when you say that. What does that really mean? Especially for small business, right? And to many of us, that means a lot of things. It can mean a lot of things, mean a few things. Often it means some sort of edge point security layer, something at the firewall level, perhaps, that prevents, bad traffic or has some sort of detection and or response facilities in it. Maybe some of that cybersecurity would blend into the workstation side, let alone the servers, but I'm mostly going to be talking about on the workstation side. Well, what's involved in that? Often it includes you buying a very expensive EDR and selling it to your customer for somewhere between $3.50 and $7 per device per month. Some of those can get quite costly, and a lot of what they do is pretty over the top, amazing stuff, right? Sometimes stuff that might be overboard for what a lot of small businesses need. I was speaking to a guy earlier this week who's telling me about he works with these small mom pop shops, 5 to 10 employees, and he's deploying full on EDR that like sandboxes files that come in, and I'm just like, wow, like that's impressive, cool technology. And he made it quite clear he's paying a lot for it. I think his total endpoint cost was like $9 a device when he added his RMM agent, which wasn't Datto RMM, not yet anyway. So I've actually discovered a number of things that are like native to Datto RMM that actually do a really good job of contributing to that cybersecurity message. And what I've deemed this as sort of a cybersecurity resilience play that includes service differentiators for the endpoint users that you would be positioning to your customer. And I find that especially a lot of companies that might have been historically more server or network centric, who are maybe starting to begin a deeper foray into workstation management, some of this stuff sometimes gets overlooked, right? And when you can position some of these little things in your offering, I'm finding a lot of success of my partners displacing incumbent service providers, displacing and winning the business from their end users, that their own end user prospects that might be looking for a service provider. So this is all very simple stuff. This is something I built, but I'm going to show you what this evolved into shortly. So just the ability to, and all these things here can be set up in literally 10 seconds because they're just built-in monitors or scripts in Datto RMM that are already there. So, the ability to disable or enable USB storage, right? Remove that physical injection potential from an external human source, right? The old pick up a USB stick in the parking lot and plug it into a computer. I don't know if any of you were by slim chance at a Robin Robbins event years ago where Datto hired a model to stand at the top of a staircase with a giant bowl of free USB sticks. And all of those USB sticks had fake malware on them. So it was fun to actually see how many people would just randomly take some completely random, non-properly branded USB sticks and plug them into their work computers and see what's on them. It would blow your mind how many people actually did it. And so we leveraged that to provide a very exciting presentation around cybersecurity and the humans, the external human source. Hilarious. Anyway, further to that, monitoring external ports, reducing that attack surface of bad actors, right? So, monitor open ports and close them when they're not being used. In Datto RMM, if you haven't discovered it yet, there's a lot of great BitLocker functionality as well in terms of monitoring the state, getting an alert if it changes, being able to suspend it, being able to rip out the recovery utility, or pardon me, the recovery key and writing it to the device in the RMM. Being able to run an audit, really great for like a new prospect engagement that you might be having. And it's a great value add to be able to, lock down C drives, encrypt your C drive, man. It's important and sounds great. Monitor DNS record changes, just making sure that you're managing somewhat a bit of an easy way for hackers to redirect traffic. You all know the value of that. And of course, our new ransomware detection and response needs not a description, for it speaks for itself. But basically, it's 50 cents, I think, is the add-on list price per device. You can turn on ransomware for however many endpoints you want, and it's 50 cents a device. And basically, in its finest, and it has characteristics of a full-on EDR in that it'll stop the ransomware and further actually isolate the device from the network to prevent it from propagating across to other devices. This is primarily behavioral based, like a string of files start to get super encrypted, it's going to stop that process in its tracks. It's not so much on the heavy EDR side where, with the auto sandboxing and reporting and all of that. It's not like that. It's just, hey, your customers had a red screen of death before and they want to pay you to fix it. Here you go. This will prevent that from becoming an issue down the road. And then, of course, having your own recovery options thereafter. Now, here's what's interesting. Okay, this little sort of brainchild I created and starting to run with. Somehow, the senior director of product RMM, got his hands on it and actually converted it into something way more cool. So let me. Oh, don't tell me I don't have it ready to go. Hold on one sec. Sorry.
And Jeff, I'm just gonna
I know I've got no time. That's what you're going to tell me, right?
I may have already shared it out in the chat. I think I know what you're alluding to. It's the Excel document Matei put together.
Yes, it is the Excel document that Matei put together, only because I created the thing that he created his thing from. But that's, beside the point. But yes, it is. So this falls under the NIST framework, right? Identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And the beauty of all the green and yellow boxes, native to Datto RMM. Native. This is built in. So you've got a slightly larger, more sophisticated customer that requires more insight and understanding on that side. Look at all this stuff that you can do right out of the box with Datto RMM that contributes very, very hefty to the NIST framework. It's a wonderful thing. So I feel like I'm out of time. I could go on for another half an hour on this thing, but I'm going to digress and I'm going to step back off my soapbox and I'm going to say, thanks for listening. That's for sure. I love it when people listen and enjoy. And I I really hope this was useful. I hope this was informative. I hope at least everybody got a little something out of this. If so, then mission accomplished. And with that, I'll stop talking and hand it over to Des.
Yes, thank you, everybody. That was awesome. Thank you so much. I did throw a polling in there. I'm hoping it works and gathers information from everyone as well. It's a system I've never used before. I was hoping I've never used it before, so we're hoping I can get that information. But if you could fill out that poll, that would be great. And then thank you guys all for joining. If there's anything that I can help you with, you please reach out to me at any point in time. My email is des@datto.com. One of the things that I did promise Steve that I would talk about, but I don't really think that, no, we just didn't really have enough time. But just in case anyone's interested in learning more information, if you're thinking about doing MDF events, if you're not leveraging Datto for MDF, whether it be for webinars, we were doing a ton of webinars. I've been doing, like I was saying at the beginning of this, is some of the interesting stuff that we've been doing with webinars is I'm seeing like an 80% register attend ratio for end user webinars is different cocktail tastings. So this one we did an event here in Calgary. We had 50 people, end users attend, and I guarantee you after that event that MSP was able to connect with those end users to book those meetings to really just further that conversation. Ton of information I have in my head. I have meetings, I'm constantly doing sessions, constantly doing webinars. So if you're ever thinking about doing any sort of events, whether it be virtual or in person, and you want to leverage me just as a CDM with the information I have in my head, or as a presenter, or maybe as MDF when it comes to Datto, please reach out to me. I can definitely help you out with any of that. And then with that, I thank you guys, Tulsie, Sarah, and Jeff. Thank you guys all so much for your time. I know that you guys are incredibly busy, so taking 90 minutes of 3 of your days is absolutely crazy. So really, really appreciate you guys taking on your time. And then everybody's watching it, also taking 90 minutes out of your day is also crazy. So thank you so much. I hope that you all got something out of it and some good education. And with that, I will say goodbye.